Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 377. Today we're going to talk about Argent, the Consortium. This is a new-ish game from Level 99 Games. It plays 2 to 5 players, and the box says 30 minutes per player, and that's probably about right actually. We played a 5-player game of this a couple weeks ago, and that took us about 2.5 hours, a little bit less than 2.5 hours actually. And so that's about right. Well, now what the players are going to be doing is trying to get elected like president of this magical school, sort of like Harry Potter, but not in that sort of theme, more of a manga, anime, sort of weird sorcery, lots of different things happening type of thing. When there's like a board of directors, you have to try to figure out what they're really looking for and sort of deduce what's going to score you the votes or score you the points. And you're going to be sending out mages and doing different actions, and the mages are like these special workers that have these different cool powers, and that can change from game to game. And the makeup and sort of the structure of the university itself can change up from game to game. It takes on a kind of a real otherworldly feel to it. So let's go ahead and jump into how it works. I hope it's not overwhelming, that it's going to take up a ton of table space. So let's just kind of jump in and give you a good feel for it. The actual core rules of the game are very simple, and I don't want it to seem overwhelming by me going into a lot of different details. So let's just kind of jump in, just kind of know the basic structure is going to be pretty basic, but you're going to be able to really change up the game in quite a lot of different ways. So let's take a look. Okay, here you can see most of the stuff that you're going to get in the game. This isn't really all of it, because if I kind of pan over a little bit, you can see there's a mess of workers and different chits over there. There's a score track over here. Here is the university, and I've randomly set out just some different rooms just to kind of go over some of the different mechanics that the rooms can have. But you can see there's another stack over here, big stack of rooms, some expansion room, some money, lots of different cards here. So you can see there's a ton of these different spell cards that you can acquire in the game. You've got legendary spells there, tons of these supporter cards, and these are sort of personalities that are going to help you, do different actions, and they're also going to give you support, or basically add to your total in different schools of magic when we're trying to total up some of the different voters and things. Now there is a whole bunch of stuff actually in addition that I have is the full Kickstarter or deluxe edition or whatever. So there's a lot of stuff you can add in from the expansion, which I have tried adding in, not really playing with any of the different rules, but adding some of the different supporters and voters and things just to mix things up, and they really changed the game quite a bit, so just know that. So the main focal point of the game is going to be this score track here, as well as these consortium members here that you're going to try to win. Now you can see there's 2 face up, and the rest of these are face down, and you don't always use all of them, so you're going to have to sort of deduce and figure out which ones are in play. But you've also got the score track here, and you can see these little spots there. So as you move along here, you're going to get and unlock these special tokens. And you'll get these tokens here, and these are going to see 1 use per turn. You see you flip them over and they get a little bit grayed out. So as you move up, you're going to get points, and you're going to be able to unlock and be able to get access to better worker placement spaces in the university itself. But the points are not the end-all be-all of the game. You don't win the game by getting the most points. So how do you win the game? Well, you want to acquire the most votes. So each person in here, each card represents a voter, and they're going to give you their vote if you fulfill their requirements. So the most simple way to get votes here is with this guy here. So if you have the most influence or the most points there, then he's going to give you his vote, his support. Now this gal here, she's going to give you the most supporters. Again, that is some cards and some folks that you're going to be acquiring in the game. Now the rest of these are face down. So to start the game, each player has a little mark in their color. We can see a purple mark, and you're going to take and put that mark on a card, but then you're going to be able to peek at it here. And you can see this one here says most mysticism. Awards a vote to the player with the most mysticism spell, research, and supporter cards. And you can see there that little icon. If you remember, I showed you that icon on the supporters. And so if you collect the most of these icons, so you're going to get spells with these icons and supporters with these icons, then she's going to give you her vote. So you're going to take and put your mark on here, and you're going to be, at this time, the only one that knows about it. And say the gray player might mark this card, and they're going to see, what they get. And then throughout the game, some of the actions are going to allow you to mark other cards. So then as the game moves along, you're going to know some of the information that some of the other players know, and so on. And there's even one of these voters here that gives you their support if you have the most marks out on the board. Now, if there's a tie, let's say, you know, the tie is for most supporters, then it's going to be a tiebreaker based on the most influence. So you don't want to neglect this wholeheartedly, because there are going to be a lot of ties, especially as players become more experienced with the game and better kind of deducing what other players have and what they might not have. Then it's going to come down to a tiebreaker based on points. But that's how you win the game, is collecting a lot of different things. Basically everything in the game that you can get. There's pretty much a voter out there for that particular resource. Now, if we take a look at the Mage Boards here, each player is going to get a player card in their color, and you can see there's a double-sided here, so there's a male and a female side, and you can choose and pick one of those. And then you've also got a matching mage card there. So this is going to give you a little bit of a starting spell, and again, these are double-sided as well. There's an A and a B side. You can see that there. So you're going to start with this, and you can see you're going to start with 5 points. You get a mark, remember, on one of the voters. You get 2 knowledge, or the game actually calls it intelligence. You get these 2 books. These are going to help you research and acquire new spells. And then you're also going to get 2 of these scrolls here, and these allow you to sort of upgrade the spells, which is a neat little aspect. Not only do you get to get new special abilities here, so you can see you acquire this spell here with the book, then you can kind of upgrade it, and it gives you more options available just on the one spell card. You start with 6 money, and you can see here is the $5 and the $1 coins there. It's plastic coins. You get 2 mana, and you can see there is the mana. These are 1 mana, and these dark blue ones are 5 mana, so you get 2 of those mana there. And then these are going to tell you the types of mages that you get. Now there's a few different ways to set it up to get the different mages, but typically you'll start with 2 in your color, and then you can get 3 others through a kind of a draft. So let's go over what the different mages are. Well, here you can see I've got 1 of each of the basic mages that are in the game, and the game comes with these sort of player aid cards here that show you what the mages do, but you also have an A and a B side on those as well. So what these are the workers that you're going to put out here on these worker placement spots on the university boards. But they can be different things, and they are going to have different special abilities when you go and place them out. So on your turn, what's going to happen is you get a fast action and then a full action. And one of the full actions that you can do, of course, is just put a worker out onto a spot on the board. Now, if you have a fast action from a special ability, for example, if you were the red mage here, you can see he starts with his spell here as a fast action to banish a mage, basically sending a mage from the university back to their player board. So I could do this ability. You can see it costs me 1 mana to do that, and then I could do a full action. So I could do a fast action, banish another mage, maybe that was taking up a spot that I wanted, and then, you know, put another mage out there for a full action. So what do the mages do? Well, speaking of fast and full actions, the purple mage can be played as a fast action. So you can see there I could maybe play the purple mage and then the green mage or something like that for the full action. The next thing you can do is you can play, let's say, the red mage, and you can play them as normal, but you can also play them burning out a spot where somebody else has placed their mage. Now you're going to have to spend a mana if you do that, and that's going to send their mage to the Infirmary, which for right now we can see is way over there. So they're going to go up there, and they're going to get a little bit of a compensation bonus there. But the red mages, of course, are ones that you have to watch out for. Just because you've got a spot early in the turn doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to keep it. Now, speaking of being burned or wounded, the green player is immune from all wound effects, so you cannot take a red mage and wound the green mage at all. So the green mage is immune. And the next thing is the gray mage. So if I have done a full action spell, so this is a free spell, costs me no mana, but I can gain 2 mana, then I can play the gray mage immediately after doing a spell that is a full action. Finally, we have the blue mage, and we're just going to place her out here, and she is immune to any spells from opponents. So for example, in this example previously, the banish a mage could not target a blue mage because they're immune to all spells. And that's just all of the A side abilities, and the B side are completely different. And one thing to just kind of know about the game here is it's really set up to mix and match, and it gives you really a big toolbox, almost a sandbox kind of feel. And the rules even say, you know, you can mix up these boards here, you can arrange them in different orders so that they get resolved in different orders. You can set up the mages differently using different sides. Of course, you have all these different spells and cards and things, and once you throw in the expansion, you can really mix up things quite a bit. So it's done in such a way that it doesn't feel like, oh, they couldn't figure out the right way to balance it, because the few different ways that we played with it, it seems balanced, and it just kind of presents to you sort of a variable setup. And now you've got that information, kind of like Dominion if you've played that, where you kind of randomly set out the cards and you're like, okay, well, what's kind of the best way to play this? And that really is how this feels. So let's go over some examples of the different worker placement spaces that you're going to do on your turn. The way that the rounds are going to work is you've basically got 1 to 5 or 6 rounds, and some of the expansions actually come with different abilities that you can have, you know, from round to round, instead of just, you know, round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. And then so you're going to play through those. You're going to take turns putting workers out, and then there's a little sort of cool pass mechanism after everybody's done that. Then you're going to go through and resolve all of the worker placement spaces, and then reset, refresh any spells, because most of the spells are one-time use per turn and things like that. So you refresh everything, and then you go back into the next round, and then whoever might have the start player key here is going to go, and then it goes around the table to the left. And then you do that, and whoever wins, then you flip over these voter cards to see who collects the most of those, and then that'll be your winner. So let's look at some of the worker placement actions. Well, I spoke about the Infirmary before, and remember, when you get wounded out of a spot, you send your mage there, and you immediately get 2 gold, a mana, or an influence point or a victory point. And so you get that immediately when you get sent there, and then at the end of the round they'll come back to you. Next we can see the library, and here you can gain a wisdom, which are the scrolls that I showed you earlier, and then you can draft a vault card. And you can see these 2 spots here have the little A symbol. Remember, I showed you these earlier. When you get more influence points, you're going to trigger and add more of those to your collection. Then you can reuse those. So when you send a guy here, you want to sort of have one of those queued up and know that you're going to be able to use them. And the other thing you can see here on the left hand side is these shadow spaces. Through the game you're going to acquire different spells, and for argument's sake, let's just go ahead and put this red mage here. Let's say he's gotten that, and then another player maybe comes along and they have a spell that allows them to shadow another mage, so they can take and use that spot. Now the person that was there legitimately first will use it first, and then whoever was shadowing would then use it second, and then of course we move down. So there is a possibility to do that. So here you can get a wisdom, draft some vault cards, you can get an int and a research, and then you can gain a buy and a research and get some intelligence. So you can collect some of these different items and then get these different vault cards and things, as well as possibly do, you can see here, research. Now research is how you get spells. So let's take a look at some of the different decks of cards that you're going to be pulling from. Now you can see there's 3 main decks of cards, and then there's sort of a secondary deck here. There's vault cards, supporter cards, and spell cards, and then there's also legendary spell cards. Now these you don't normally get access to. You've got to take some kind of special ability out of these other cards that allow you to get access to these. But these, whenever you do that, you just flip them over and then pick a cool one that you think is going to be best, maybe based on the abilities or based on the color. Again, remember, you're collecting these different icons of colors, and you'll take that. So when you do a research, you're going to look at any of the 3, there'll always be 3 of these face up, and then you'll be able to pull one of these. Now to do that, you have to have one of the books, remember. You've got to have a book, and you take that, and then you'll take this and put it in front of you, and then a new one will flop out onto the table for anybody else. And then the other thing you can do with the research is you can spend a scroll, and then after you have a spell in your possession, you can advance that. And I mean, I can go over and over and over and over how many different special abilities and things. I mean, there's so many. Each of these has 3, and I don't know, what is there, like 40 in here? I'm sure there's not 40. There's a few. But so a lot of these are just really cool, crazy ways to break up the sort of basic structure of the turn and the order that you resolve things, and just, you know, breaking rules, getting things cheaper, and all kinds of crazy stuff. So, but anytime you do a research, you can either get a new spell if you've got a book to pay for it, or upgrade your existing spell. And again, once you use these spells, you just kind of tap them, and they are used for the turn. And so if you let's say you had the spell totally upgraded and you use the spell at the bottom, you no longer have access to those until the next turn. The other thing you can do is sometimes you will buy these vault cards, which I'll talk about in a second, and you can see, of course, here the costs. There's always going to be 3 of these face up. These you're going to put them in front of you, and but sometimes it'll tell you to draft. And so you can sometimes draft them off the top of the deck or draft them from what's face up on the table itself. And these are all kinds of different things as well. You can see some of these are full actions. Some of these are going to be a fast action. They give you a little bit of iconography. But basically, the way it works is if it's a treasure, you can use it once per turn, kind of like a spell, sort of like a free spell. Now, if it's a consumable, you're going to take and use it, and then you're going to put it here. You can see this little spot here on the player board. You're going to go ahead and put it face down there in your discard pile. And so you might still count these up at the end of the game, because maybe there's a voter that says, hey, whoever has the most vault cards or the most consumables or the most treasures or whatever. So you still want to acquire these for that, so you're going to need to keep track of those. Now, the other thing you can get here are supporters. And again, these to note have different icons. And remember, there is already somebody that wants just the most total supporters. There's going to be people that want the most mystic or nature. That's what the green one is, and all these different things. And so you're going to add up, in that case, anything that you've researched here, as well as any supporters. And supporters are sort of like consumables. You'll get them, and then they have a fast action or an action, like this one will give you 2 points. And then when you use them, you take them and put them into your discard pile there. And so then, you know, they're going to count at the end of the game. So different actions on the worker placement board is going to give you these different cards that you're going to get access to. And here is the Catacombs. And you can see the first spot says draw a secret supporter. That means just drawing off the top of the deck and stick it right in your discard pile. So you don't get them for their ability, but you get them for the type of magic and the icon that they have on there to add to getting the votes. And then you can also get 2 points, and then get points equal to the number of players that have more points than you. Now here's a cool spot. Here's a courtyard. So you can get mana equal to the number of scrolls you have plus 2. And so that's going to go up as the game progresses, because the scrolls you have on your spells also count. And then you can get mana equal to your wisdom, or just get 3 mana as a consolation prize. And here's a spot where you can get buys. So here you can get 3 buys, and then you can buy those vault cards for the value of them here, or you can get 2 or 1 buy. And then here you can also spend $4 and buy, you know, some of the different intelligence and things like that. And I just wanted to show you one of the special buildings. There's some other very special buildings. And again, you can mix these up and do however you want to do it here. This one allows you to move this little token here 1 space and then pay 1 gold per space. And then you can make it maybe pay 2 gold per space, or 3 if you don't get the good spot. And then you can get these different, you know, things here. So this is kind of cool. You can kind of move that back and forth, and then it's going to reset at the end of the round. Now the other thing you can do on your turn, and it counts as a full action, is taking one of these bell tower cards. And these give you different things, but as soon as the last one is taken, that's going to be the end of the round. There are some special abilities and things that can do as a reaction to when the last bell tower card is taken. So players can do sort of a last ditch, you know, placement of their workers. So you have to keep that kind of stuff in mind. But for example, this one here, if you take this, you get the first player key. This one will give you some points. This is a good one actually to take early, so you don't necessarily have to wait till the end of the round to start snatching these. It says your spells cost 1 less mana for the remainder of the round. And this one allows you to heal somebody that is in the infirmary and that maybe got burned up or wounded. And so anyway, you take these as a full action, and once the last one's taken, that's the end of the round. So that is basically the whole game. As you can see, there's just a ton of stuff. Just so much stuff on the table with this game. But it's really simple. I mean, you place a worker, and you can grab some stuff, and then all the complexity and things come out through the spells and the vault items and the supporters and all the different crazy stuff that you can do. So let's jump into the review. Okay, so what do I think of the game? I love it. I love the game to death. Now, there's 2 key things to take away from the game. One is just, of course, the variability of all the spells and the abilities and supporters and all that kind of crazy stuff. And again, remember I said, even with those different colored mages, you can play with the A or B side there, and just those workers themselves are going to have different varying special abilities. Now with the expansion, you can add in like a new orange mage, and sometimes there's a yellow mage that can come out based on how the cards are dealt out. And there's different sort of like scenarios that you can play and things like that. So, and the room setup and everything about the game is just so modular. And of course, the game's gonna take up a ton of table space, and I can really see that almost being considered a knock against the game. As like, okay, so they made this whole big variable setup smorgasbord, and they really threw the kitchen sink at it. And so did, is that necessarily a great thing? Because there's just so much you can do, and there's just so many different things, and take the table, it's just like all these combinations of things happening. Is that really a good thing? I think it is. I think it really, really works. It fits the theme. It's just crazy out of this world, magical. Everything's magical, kind of like the whole Harry Potter thing. It's like the university's magical. Every little item you find has some kind of weird magical ability and things like that. I like it. I think it works very, very well in that regard. Now, the second part of the game that really, works for me is the way that you win the game. Is you get the support of the different voters in the different ways of the game. Now, it is kind of a point salad-y way to do that. It's like, so some of them will be like, whoever has the most mana, they'll get the vote. Whoever has the most points, whoever has the most consumables, or just the most items, or the most, green icons, or just the most spells. And then this one is like the most diversity. So if you have all the different colors of spells and all the different colors of supporters, then you've got a shot at winning that. So it's kind of a set collection vibe, but it doesn't really end up feeling that way at all to me, not at all. So it's cool because you kind of deduce what's happening, and it really kind of changes up the way the player count works, because you've got the same amount of supporters out here, the Consortium cards. And so if you're playing a 5-player game, you need to probably win like 3 or 4, because you divide it up. There's 12, divided by the number of players. That's going to change a little bit. And it becomes a real interesting thing where it's like, okay, if I go get this spell or person, it's going to give me an icon to a color I probably will need, maybe, I don't know, at the beginning of the game. But it's also going to give me a cool special ability, which is going to make things easier and I can do more stuff. But I also need some points just to get points, and so I have the tiebreaker, and points are good because it's at least one supporter. I keep calling them supporters, but the one voter that gives me the most, gives me their vote for the most points. Or sometimes I need to go get a mark, and I need to mark so I can see how I actually win the game. So that sort of worker placement mixed with deduction is really, really cool, because you can see what other people have seen, and you can kind of tell what they're trying to get. Now, something like most mana won't necessarily be a dead giveaway, because mana is pretty useful anyway, because you need it to cast spells. But if you see somebody kind of take like more than one green guy, then you're kind of, okay, well, the green one's in play. And then you can kind of know, well, should I try to chase them and beat them? Or do I want to just, let them have that one and then go after some different other ones? And that's going to change, not drastically, but the considerations kind of change based on the number of players. But it works well at the different player counts. So yeah, I really have a great time with this. It's very, very fun. It definitely plays quicker the more we've played it. So it is kind of a lot. It's a big table space, and it's sort of overwhelming, like I said at the beginning of the review. But it's not really. And you got to read all the spell cards and the cards and stuff that come out. But they'll kind of do, stuff that you would... They don't do anything too nutty where you're like, okay, that doesn't make sense. Everything kind of makes sense. And you can set up these cool combos where you can sort of wait a little bit and then put out like 4 mages on a turn. You don't want to do that too early, because you can get knocked out and become the target of other spells and get, wounded and burned away and all that stuff. But it's really, really fun. It's cool. It's a very different kind of theme for a worker placement game, and you can keep coming back to it. You can just mix it up and just make it really crazy with some of these different special abilities. And even without the expansions, there's like so many different things that you can add in, but with the expansions, it's just like, so much stuff. So very, very fun, completely different style of game than I think people have really seen. So I would definitely take a look at it, and I honestly would not be intimidated by all of the stuff that's on the table, unless table space is a consideration for sure. So if you don't have a table at all to hold all this stuff, because this takes up about the entire table that you see here, and I've got everything laid out, but once you really set everything out, especially if you play with a 5-player game, but even if you play in 2 players, it still takes up a lot of room. So I would highly recommend people take a look at this. It's a very interesting game. So thanks.